Hello everyone. Welcome to yet another episode of our Express with Ease segment on VUTV by Vijayvomi. It's a special weekly episodic segment where we discuss topics of great importance and that require immediate attention with students. Today being no different, we are going to discuss about a great topic which is the ongoing war about Russia and Ukraine. The devastation caused by Russia's invasion of Ukraine is being felt around the world. In recent developments of the Russia-Ukraine crisis, tens of thousands of Russian troops have marched on Ukraine's borders, raising fears that Moscow will invade soon. The cases of the condition of Kyiv and Kharkiv are miserable. Lots of civilians have lost their life and lot of people have been homeless. The impact of war on Ukrainian citizens is unimaginable and it's horrifying to witness. What are the chances that Putin will start a war with Ukraine? How the war will turn its mode around? Who are the countries who will be supporting Russia and who the countries will be supporting Ukraine? Are we expecting a World War III in a massive scale? Are we expecting some nuclear invasion? Today we are going to discuss all these questions with our panelists. We have with us Dhwani Bhandari from Vijayabhumi University and we have Dhriti from Shishuvan Public School. Welcome panelists for today's discussion. Thank you for joining us for today's discussion, Dhwani and Dhriti. Starting with it, I just let's start with Dhwani. Dhwani, could you let us viewers know what was the reason for Russia and Ukraine conflict? What does Putin exactly want from Russia, and why Putin is invading Russia?
It's far more geopolitical and it's in Russia's security interest. If Ukraine joins NATO and EU, then it would be difficult for Russia in many terms, like importing oil, natural gas reserves, which were found in the Black Sea near the Ukrainian coast. If Russia gains access to Crimea, they directly gain access to the entire reserve, and economically it is very beneficial for Russia to have that. Plus, Europe, they supply a lot of natural gas to the European countries, which if Ukraine has better connections with the European countries and builds the infrastructure near the Black Sea to extract the oil reserves, it will be economically very fatal for the Russian government. Plus, if we go back to the history, which is uh, how Putin states it, that the Soviet Union breakup was not fair, and he wants the former USSR to be one again. So there are many political interests involved, which are not only geopolitical but also economical, and it would be uh, great for Putin if he gets Crimea and Ukraine under his control.
Great, nicely said, Dhwani. As you also mentioned about the economic interest of Russia on Ukraine, and also the being a part of NATO. Russia is never agreed, or I can say, because when they saw when Ukraine showed up its interest towards being a part of the European Union, they resisted that movement. In the case when we have seen the case of 2014, there was a revolution around this thing where the half of the Ukrainians were not in the favor of not in the favor of joining in the European Union, which we call as a separatist group, and half of the Ukrainians were in the favor of joining the European Union. And majority of them, more than majority of them, were in the favor of joining the Ukraine. And when they saw their president lean down before Putin of joining the European Union, they overthrown the parliament, and there was a new revolution. There was a revolution happened where they where they supported in the favor of joining the European Union. So Putin, starting from his history only, they are not Putin doesn't want Ukraine to lose the hold, like to hold lose the hold of being a part of the Russian empire or being the part of the Russian sovereignty. So Ukraine, Putin always wanted Ukraine to be a part of it, not to be an independent country as such, or to be a part of the European Union or NATO. Going ahead with Riti, would you have some similar points, or would you like to add some other similar other set of points or perspective?
I had the same similar points, but I would like to elaborate a little bit. So, at the heart of the current crisis between Russia and Ukraine, so the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, so it is a group of 30 countries, including US, France, Germany, and other countries. So, Ukraine wants to join this group, and uh, the NATO basically, and Russia doesn't want NATO to allow Ukraine to become its member, as it would expand the grouping footprint to its border. So a lot of NATO countries around its border, and this would be a huge problem for Russia, according to Russia. And as you know, NATO supports the countries. It's a collective defense, basically. So it has a huge military power, and Ukraine doesn't want. Sorry, Russia doesn't want any huge military power around its borders, which would be a threat to Russia as of now.
Great.
It would be like Russia is surrounded by all sides by the NATO countries, and it would be difficult for it to defend its boundaries.
Yes, exactly.
Like a major security threat to Russia.
Certainly, as Dhriti rightly said, the NATO has a policy where the countries who are part of the NATO treaty, so the part of the NATO, they are defended by other countries if there is a case of war. So the other countries would send up their troops and also send up the support if there is a case of war, or if there is an invasion on any of the country who is a part of the NATO. So rightly said, if Russia loses its control over the borders of all the countries who are becoming part of the NATO. In 2004, we have seen like 10 countries were added to the European Union, where some of the countries were sharing a majority of the borderlines with Russia. So if also right now, if Ukraine will lose its control, so it would be a great case of maybe, as Putin has said, ki if NATO will try to invade Russia or will cross the red lines, then we would also send our troops to fight against the policies. So rightly said. So I guess we are right now clear on this part, what Putin wants from us. So Putin doesn't want to be a part of the Ukraine to be a part of the NATO or European Union. So nevertheless, Putin has couldn't stop couldn't stop. Basically, Putin had tried to give the bribe of somewhere around $15 billion to doesn't associate with European Union. So the then president at 2014, there was a bribe was we can send unofficially we can say it was a bribe was given to Ukraine to doesn't join the European Union, but the president was overthrown thereafter. So then the next president took over the chance and took over the support of the people to join the European Union. So that couldn't be stopped by Putin. So there was a heartbreak of Putin as such. But right now, Putin doesn't want to let Ukraine to join the NATO forces, as we rightly said. Going ahead with the topic, right now we have seen a lot of devastation happened in the lot of devastation already happened in this 8 days, or we can say that it's been a 2 weeks of devastation. Earlier it was asked that the US was predicting the war would start on 16th of Feb, but there was a case where we have seen the China try to pressurize Russia to start the war after 20th Feb, because China was ongoing with the Beijing Olympics and they didn't want any devastations happening with during the time. And we have suddenly seen on 21st Feb where where Russian President Putin declared that they wanted to send up their troops for peacekeeping in two of the separatist provinces of the of the Ukraine of the Ukraine Empire. So, Dhwani, could you also shed some light on this two provinces where Russia is trying to show its support?
The provinces of Luhansk and Donetsk are the two provinces where Russia is trying to show. They state that a majority of the people there are Russians, and belong. Many citizens also consider them to be a part of Russia and are uh, rebelling against Ukraine, and the government and supporting the Russians in this war.
Great, Zveni. Dhriti, I would be curious to know from your side, from you, why we see two different opinions from these people. Like, according to you, why do you feel like these provinces have two different opinions? Some people doesn't want to be a part of Russia, and some people want to be. So, according to you, what do you feel? Why we see a different two perspectives being this in these provinces?
So, few people want to be a part of Russia. That is because mainly they might be Russians who might have migrated to other countries during the previous wars, and they want to go back to their hometown, basically. And a few might not want to be because, as you know, Russia here does not have much allies. It's one of the great countries, yes, but US, as you know, US is not to say enemy, but enemy like to Russia. I mean, they don't get along very well, if you see that way. And the other allies which Russia has is North Korea, China, and a few more. And that's, yeah, Russia is, as of now, a little low, I would say.
Certainly, I guess you have rightly said maybe there would be the case of migration
Yes.
where there may be much of sense of culture or maybe a sense of belongingness by the troops or by the people who are residing in these provinces. And as you rightly said, US doesn't have doesn't support Russia as such because we have already seen in the case of 70s where there was a Cold War between two of these provinces, Russia and US, and there was massive devastation as such at that moment as well. So
It like
going, yeah,
add like after the World War One, like Germany was not involved in the major decisions and the sanctions and treaty that was made to be signed by Germany. Uh, Similarly, after the Cold War, the USSR disintegrated, and Russians, like ever since then, have declined and struggled to become stable back again. So it's also kind of like a deep wound on the Russians, and Putin wants to avenge that and wants, at least, if not the USSR is integrated back together, that the spread of EU and NATO stops where it is, and furthermore territories or countries are not added to it.
great journey. So going ahead with the as per your perspective, I would like to clarify on this thing. Don't you think that Russia already has invaded Crimea? Okay, so the reverse has been satisfied already because Russia has been already invaded the Crimea and parts of Georgia as well. So Russia is indefinitely trying in the last decade to to grab a good control over its borders and the neighboring countries who are sharing the borders with it. So don't you think that already Russia has taken its revenge around this after this
But
breakdown of Soviet USSR?
that was just the start of what Putin wanted. So he clearly stated that that is the beginning, and this is eventually, this was predicted that this war was about to happen, and Putin would advance further his interests and not stop after annexing up parts of Ukraine.
Great, Dhvani. So moving ahead with Riti, do you also share a similar opinion, or you have a different set of opinion to share?
Similar opinion. That's
Great.
exactly what I wanted to say.
So Riti, my next question would be, will Russia loses Crimea, like loses hold of Crimea if the war in Ukraine turns really ugly for them?
Seeing the current scenario, I don't think so because Russia initiated the war itself. So obviously, Russia might have thought about Crimea before taking this huge unexpected step, the war. And in 2014, Russia had already captured Crimea, and no way it will want to lose it. And so basically, there's a very low probability for this to happen. And unless a very diplomatic isolation is created by the US and the other NATO countries, which would lead to the destruction of Russia's economy, and maybe even the sanctions which would be put forward by the other countries might lead to Russia losing Crimea, but very low probability.
Certainly, I guess as you well said, Russia has already grabbed a good hold of Crimea, but also we can say on this perspective, the UN, United Nations, and none of the international organizations consider Crimea to be a part of the Russia. Rather, they consider Crimea to be a part of the Ukraine. And the referendum where they conducted a poll, it was an unofficial poll where they asked Crimean people, what is the motive? Like, what is the motive, and what is the thought? Do you want to be a part of the Russia, or do you want to be a part of the Ukraine? Well said. The referendum turned out to be 97% were agreed that they want to be part of Russia, and there was a 83% voter turnout. But unofficially, when we saw some reports, the voter turnout was only 40%, and there was like less than 55% people only agreed that they want to be a part of the Russia. So no international organization, or none of them agrees on this fact that Crimea should be a part of the Russia. Rather, they consider Crimea to be part of the Ukraine. So even Ukraine is also on that 2017. They declared that they would be working die hard. They would be working die hard to again regain their position on Crimea, and they would be trying to release it from the hands of Russia. So, nevertheless, but as you shared, they have already invaded on this position, and they have devastated, like they have planted their troops. So maybe that's a great condition. I guess that's a great hold already they have tried. But Dhwani, I guess you can also clarify on this perspective. If if all the powerful nations like US, Germany, UK, they come in hand and join hands with Ukraine, would they also work for the support of release of Crimea with the support of releasing Ukraine and saving Ukraine from being invaded and also getting hold of Crimea as well?
Can you repeat it? Sorry, the internet was lagging for a bit.
Sure, Dhwani. So basically, I was just asking, when major powerful nations would support Ukraine in the war, would they also work for like releasing Crimea? And what would be basically, I was just curious to know the position of US. Is Ukraine a US ally? What do you think?
While the other countries don't want to be directly involved right now, everyone is acting diplomatically because they are supporting Ukraine, but they don't want to act right now because it could lead to a world war. Because if other countries get involved, there would be allies, and like it could lead to a bigger war. But while Ukraine has also put in their efforts to gain back Crimea, like they have cut off the water supply from the canal, which was the main source of water for this state of Crimea, which is now a very dry state, and living conditions there are very difficult. So people would naturally not want Russians to be there if the condition remains the same. The Russians have also built a strait to supply water there, but it is very costly and not easy for them to do that job yet, which is why the even though Russians have a good hold of Crimea, but it's not sure how long it will last, or if they would want to continue there in such, people would want to live there in such dire conditions. And about US, it's also US further interest that US does not want any other country to rise to power. It wants its supremacy, even though it won't state it clearly. But ever since the Cold War, it's been the fact it's been there that US has been on top and like the undefeated superpower ever since then. That's my view about.
Great, Ganesh. Thanks for sharing that. I guess you have rightly said about a lot of points why, and the position which you talk about, the cutting down of the water pipeline. As we know, okay, water is one of the necessary amenities to live. So basically, that would be also a major threat of losing the hold of Crimea by Russians. So Dhriti, moving ahead with you, like my question to you would be, and there was just like there was a most powerful question and one of the important question which we should discuss upon. Did the Americans actually lure Putin, like they are just trying to lure Putin, sacrificing Ukraine into a game that would end in his downfall? Like they are trying to create a bait kind of thing. Is this a bait or a what I can say a good chance of trap for Putin? This are Americans are planning something sort of this?
It could be they might be planning. So the Americans here have their own agenda, and they have always wanted Ukraine to be a part of NATO, even the other NATO countries. So Ukraine might have thought that the Western European countries and the NATO countries would help them become the part of NATO. And at this moment, it looks like that NATO is just sanctioning Russia, which might be a cause. And also, it might, I think this might be a mistake made by the US and the Western European countries to lure Ukraine and and to make them believe that they could be a part of NATO. And but as of now, current situation, Ukraine is on its own. So this might affect Russia also, as its trade might be globally decreasing, and it might not be able to do business with the other countries, or the other countries might just stop doing business with them, with Russia. So this might lead to Russia's downfall eventually, economically.
Certainly, I guess you guys have rightly pointed out it the how different countries are trying to support Ukraine, but not like directly supporting, but indirectly they're supporting Ukraine through different boycott and through different economic sanctions. As we have seen in the case of Germany, where they have like stopped 50% of the crude petrol. This is a petrol pipeline they stopped from, which was flowing from Russia. And UK, United Kingdom, and France also have boycotted a lot of royal banks. They have basically hit the economic sanctions, and even they are going to continue this footfall. Even we have also seen a lot of major companies like Nike, Adidas, Apple stopping their transactions, stopping their economic benefits from Russia. So yeah, nevertheless, they're trying to what I can say, they're trying to defeat Ukraine. They're trying to defeat Russia by supporting Ukraine, but indirectly they're trying to hit the economic crisis. So majorly, we have seen in the when this economic powers have unitedly boycotted some country. We have seen in the case of inflation. If you see from the perspective of economics, the inflation has been doubled in Russia within 10 days of war. So, Dhwani, could you please shed some light on the position of India? Like, what is India's? My first question would be: is India silent on this invasion? Is India is being silent on this invasion? And the next question would be: whom does India support in this ongoing Russia and Ukraine crisis? So, we have seen in the case, we have already seen in the news that India is trying to silently supporting Russia. Okay, but it's like they have a neutral opinion on it, and they're also sending up the troops to basically release the Indian students over Ukraine. So, what is your take on this?
It's actually quite tricky for India because India imports a lot of their defense planes and everything from Russia, and it has already certain deals which they are going to supply. And if India directly cuts support or directly does not side with Russia, or uh, you right now India is neutral and is not siding with either Ukraine or Russia. But if India would have voted against Russia, it would be a huge economic loss for India. So while India does not want a war at all, and it has stated that it does not support the what Russians are doing, but it also has to look out for its geopolitical interests. And uh, in the end, it's like every country is looking out for themselves.
Great. Yeah, I guess we can rightly say that every country is trying to save themselves from the economic crisis, and like being neutral, it's only is the right part, as you rightly said. Ki being neutral is the only best opinion, or is the best option to go with it. And I guess you have rightly pointed out the figures of the imports, like how India is largely dependent on Russia for its defense requirements about the aircrafts and the planes. So if we also consider the Russian defense aircraft, Russia's defense, basically the trajectory, they have a massive defense aircraft trajectory. If you talk about missiles, guns, or tanks, bombs, that is quite indefinitely we can say indefinitely say it's 5 times or 10 times bigger than the Ukraine. If we talk about the military power of Ukraine, if we compare the military power of Ukraine and Russia, so that's indefinitely bigger than both of the countries. So Russia is a large supplier of defense requirements to all the other countries, like India being one of them. So Diti, what's your take on this? Like, what do you think? What is the position of India according to you?
So India is very silent as of now, but it is on a neutral stand. So it wants the war to it doesn't want the war to take place, and wants this conflict to resolve peacefully. So India has a lot of bilateral trade with Russia, as they have a lot of long-term military engagement with Russia. So due to this, India might want to support Russia a little bit, but it is silent as of now, because it would affect India's economy badly. And also the Indian government has decided to provide urgent relief supplies to including medicines and everything to Ukraine. And I think it had been dispatched a couple of days ago. And India is also deeply concerned for the safety and security of the thousands of Indians which are in Ukraine. And also in such times of conflict, India attaches the highest priority to safety, as well as the well-being of citizens, in particular women, children, and the elderly. They support. So India is supporting all the humanitarian efforts.
Great. I guess Ritu, you have highlighted the great points about why India should be a silent supporting for Russia, because as you mentioned, they're highly dependent on they want the safety. They want the safety of the students first. And I guess we can also reflect on our past. We see if we see from the past of on our constitution, also we see the past during the times of world wars. So India wasn't part of any of the world war, because India doesn't support wars. Basically, India support a peace kind of nature. We see. Going ahead, I guess most of the countries are also fear of this opinion, and this is also a part which can also instigate a case of world war. Russia holds a good grab of hold on the nuclear weapons. So, what do you think? Is how do you think nuclear weapons, Russia would start using these nuclear weapons when a lot of countries would start supporting Ukraine, because that would be a defeating position for Russia at the such. When a lot of powerful countries like US, Germany, UK, France start supporting Ukraine, that would be a defeating position of Russia. So at that point, maybe Russia can start using its nuclear weapons, and that could be great. That would be alarming. That would be alarming for the whole world. And we have already seen the devastation due to nuclear weapons in the case of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in Japan. That was a huge devastation. And also, we have seen how, in the case of Syria, where this war has led to huge difficulties for the civilians over there. So I would start with the nuclear position. I will start with the nuclear position. Then you could, what is your reflection on this? How these nuclear weapons uses by Russia can be alarming? Like, and what do you think? Would at any point Russia will start its nuclear explosions?
The use of nuclear weapons in general is not good, like by any country, because it could lead to major destruction of life and property, and the after effects are also very uh, fatal for the people living in and around nearby the places affected. Plus, if the borders shared by Russia, if by chance Poland gets affected, it is one of the NATO countries. And if it gets affected, even the slightest bit, the clause 5 of NATO will get activated, and it eventually leads to the World War, because all the NATO countries are then directly involved in a direct war with Russia.
Definitely. I guess that's a great highlight from Sunny. As you mentioned, if by any chance the Poland gets affected, so there will be like this clause would be activated by the NATO countries, and these 30 NATO countries will start supporting against the war for Poland. Thereafter supporting Ukraine, and there would be major destruction. But in that case, I guess we can see China is being a silent supporting to Russia at any point, and also that Russia will try to gain his power from other communist countries. Maybe we can see from the case of Belarus. Yeah, Dhwani, you had to say yourself. You had something to say.
No.
Okay, cool. So yeah, maybe that would be a case of instigating the World War. Dhriti, going ahead with you. What do you think? We have seen a lot of devastation for the civilians, and also I have highlighted the case of Syria, where where due to this wars, there is a case. The at the end, civilians are the most affected ones. Okay, and how we can basically how to avoid this harm for the civilians. It's also Ukraine is trying to prepare its civilians for the war. Like the Ukrainians are coming together, they are preparing themselves for the war. They're preparing themselves for basically get out of the invasion. They're preparing themselves for getting out of the invasion. They're planning for revolution. So how to avoid this harm for the civilians?
So okay, so to avoid harm, it's based on the countries. They can solve it diplomatically, and if they don't, so basically all the parties to the armed conflict are responsible for ensuring that their civilian population is protected. So here it's Russia and Ukraine, and guaranteeing and promoting accountable for violations for international humanitarian and human rights, and also ensuring the protection through UN peacekeeping, the United Nations organization here, and also the other nations by delivering protection, especially to those who are the most vulnerable, and also, the protection of the civilian includes the use of force to protect the civilians under imminent threat, as well as the other activities such as contributing to creating the security conditions conducive to delivery of humanitarian assistance, and taking measures to ensure security in and around the country, basically.
Great. I guess you have highlighted some great effective measures which the Ukrainian government has tried, and also your perspective, like how they can save the civilians from getting affected from this position and from this crisis of war. Uh, I guess we are in the at the conclusion of the webinar, and we are at the conclusion of the discussion. I would be greatly influenced by you to know and know your perspective. Like, what's your plan? Like, how we can resolve this crisis, because no one wants a war. Even if you like, no one wants a war. Even the great powerful leaders also agreed on this fact that they don't want a war, and they want some diplomatic relations, and something should happen to stop this war. Because we have already seen like two world wars. We have already seen two world wars and the devastation and the harmful effects which it has caused to the whole world. Till date, people are suffering because of that. So what do you think? What's your opinion? How we can resolve on this crisis? Dhwani, we can start with you.
Putin has clearly stated what he wants, and he has stated that he wouldn't stop until he gets what he wants. So the chance of sitting down and signing a peace pact seems very like futuristic or very hard to convince Putin to even listen to what other countries want to say. But if Russia is given the assurance that its borders will be secure and there wouldn't be any threat to Russia in future, and Ukraine agrees to not become a part of NATO, or NATO find some way that their policies are not compromised yet the conflict is resolved, then maybe there is a chance that the leaders might agree to sign a pact and the war might come to an end.
Great, Dhwani. But I was just a bit of curious to know, because you highlighted that maybe there will be a peace pact signed between Russia and Ukraine. But I would love to highlight this incident on 2011. Basically, there was an agreement signed, Minsk agreement, which was signed between both of the countries, where they agreed on this fact that the separatist group would be giving an autonomy power. The separatist group over the Ukraine would be giving an autonomy power, and Russia won't disturb this thing. Russia won't try to disturb on this impact. But we have seen that Putin has violated this, has violated the law and the agreement, we can say, and Putin has tried to instigate fighting, genocides in these two provinces, where it has led a lot of lives, where it has led 14,000 plus the basically 14,000 people, 14,000 civilians have lost this life, have losing this their life because of this violation of the agreement. And there has been multiple genocides, there have been multiple killings because of the different opinion. So do you think the peace pact would be really effective as such? Or I guess you also highlighted this incident where all the leaders, all the powerful leaders and NATO, US, they should come together for a more conclusive agreement.
Or maybe the worst case situation is the assassination of Putin and some new leader comes to effect, and then there might be some chance of a peace pact.
That's quite brutal. Yeah, but we can't. Yeah, I guess it's like killing the problem from its roots.
Fine.
Great. Moving into Dhriti, what's your opinion? How we can resolve this crisis?
Yeah, I would like to add on to the assassination point. So this has actually taken place before, which was one of the immediate cause of the Second World War. The assassination of some important person, I'm not quite sure about it, but of Australia and Hungary. So the assassination was taken out by a group of Serbians. They wanted Serbia to become a Balkan state, and this led to the immediate cause of the Second World War. So basically, Austria declared war on Serbia, and then all the countries took part. Yeah. And also how to solve the current crisis. So according to me, this can only be solved through a diplomatic dialogue between Russia and Ukraine. So two rounds of this diplomatic dialogue have already taken place, and if I'm not wrong, then today was the third round, and Russia has announced a ceasefire. And even diplomatic pressures from other countries, US and other countries might help, and their sanctions maybe. So I hope this gets resolved. So.
Great. I guess some nice points shared with Dhriti. I guess that was some quite nice points as you mentioned. If we of all the countries unite and started pressurizing Russia on the economic sides, and the dialogue deliberations for the release of this crisis would be a great effect. But hoping for the best after this discussion, and I guess we can pray to Almighty for the souls which have lost their life because of this crisis, the innocent souls which have been in the part of the war, but indefinitely they have lost their life. We should pray to Like best wishes to Almighty for their good souls, for the peace. And thank you guys for joining for today's discussion. It was nice to see you guys. We are discussing on a geopolitical topic, and that's the initiative which we have started from UTP, where we invite panelists, we invite students as panelists to discuss about the immediate topics and the topics which are in crisis, the topics which are in current affairs. And it was nice to get your opinions and just to know your perspective around this geopolitical incidents. It also helps us to know if students are also taking active participation in the basically the recent affairs and the recent crisis and being the change makers of the country. Thank you guys for joining in, and thank you for all the viewers and the people who are going to watch this video thereafter on YouTube and on our different social media platforms. I hope you could learn a lot of things from this discussion, and also put down in the comments about your perspective, about your thoughts. What do you feel about this crisis? Thank you guys for joining in. Hope you stay connected. See you in the next discussion on next Saturday. Thank you guys. See you guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you.